Hello, my name is Tennyson E. Stead. I am a working screenwriter. I am a working script doctor. And welcome to The Right Stuff. During our last session, we finished the rough draft of this screenplay up through the midpoint. And you're already getting a sense for how this work is going to go, but there are some important things to talk about in terms of managing, frankly, the intensity of the arc above and beyond anything else. So, during the last session, we let the protagonists push their efforts to achieve their goal right up to the point where whoever's working against them has taken all the safeties off and has really made undermining the protagonist's efforts their top priority in their efforts to achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve in turn, right? This is the point in the movie where the unsustainability of what the protagonist is trying to do really starts to show itself. They have pushed as hard as they can without the rest of the world pushing back as hard as it can. Now the rest of the world is pushing back with maximum effort, and the protagonist is going to find out to what degree this was never, ever, ever going to happen. Okay? So, even though it's becoming clear that the protagonist is failing in their efforts, they can't bow to that failure. Maybe it's because they believe in their own ingenuity and they expect that they're going to find a way to get on top of the problems that are mounting on them. Maybe it's because they refuse to acknowledge just how bad things are looking right now. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the protagonist is using every single tool in their toolbox, whether it's, inspiring themselves or whether it's deluding themselves. Their own psychological commitment to this goal is part of that toolbox. So they're going to use every single tool that they have to keep themselves motivated and invested just as much as they are going to use that toolbox to actually get the job done, right? Keeping themselves invested is part of that job. The protagonist is going to do whatever it takes to adapt to the fact that the world is pushing back so hard. They're gonna do whatever it takes to make their goal happen. And anybody who's ever lost anything in this world knows that that kind of deeply committed effort, when things aren't sustainable at the expense of sustainability, can be incredibly destructive. So, the first thing I want to give you a heads up about here is that the end of Act 2, as you develop the characters' efforts to achieve their goal in spite of their resources are starting to dwindle, the confidence of other people in their efforts, that's starting to dwindle. That wake-up call really was the midpoint of the film. So, as they keep pushing and as they keep trying to make this goal happen, you may find that the end of Act 2 starts looking worse than you expected. You might find a worst-case scenario than the one that you anticipated when you started writing the script. And I want to let you know right now that that is okay. That is something you should embrace. All that means is that the stakes are getting higher, that the job is harder than you thought it was, and that the fact that the protagonist finds a way to overcome their challenges in Act 3, that's going to feel much more impressive to the audience for the fact that things are getting worse. You may not know how that's possible right now. Things may get so bad that you can't find a way out for the protagonist, and that's okay too. That's not your job right now. Right now, your job is to let them run the wheels off the car. That's your job. So don't sweat the fact that you may not have a plan for them in Act 3. Don't worry about it. Let them destroy themselves, their community, their chances of success, and everything else as thoroughly as possible now. And we'll worry about the rest of that in the next session, okay? On that same subject, we, as writers, do like to throw plot. This is always when someone gets cancer, is what I'm saying. This part of the movie is always when we find out that mom's not going to make it. That's not acting. That's just demanding another reaction. That's setting up an emotionally charged situation to try and lend some emotional energy to the story as it develops. We don't need to do that because the protagonist is losing things and destroying things that matter more to them right now than whatever incidental stuff we might be throwing in from the outskirts of the story. Whatever it is that they're trying to do in this story, it's the most important thing about them. It's the most important thing in their lives, and they're screwing it up unintentionally through their best efforts. You don't need to gild the lily. You just need to commit completely to that effort, okay? To help avoid that passive storytelling impulse. Again, we tend to put a pinch 2, directly in between the midpoint and the end of Act 2, the second turning point. This is something that the character does in their efforts to accomplish their goal, which inevitably overextends them to profound degrees and accelerates the cataclysm that they've been creating. It accelerates the collapse of the stock market bubble that they have been slowly building since the movie started. Okay? And oftentimes, as we find the stakes of the movie increasing, and as we find that this character is capable of pushing the boundaries of their stamina, their resources, much farther than we anticipated, and as a result overextending themselves more completely than we thought, it's very common to find that the beat that you thought was the end of Act 2, you thought was the worst case scenario, is actually pinch 2. And they push through that to create an even worse reality for themselves. Happens all the time. I want you to be ready for it, because if that happens, you just go right ahead and make that adjustment. What I don't want you to do is restrain the protagonist's overextension and sort of box them into hurting themselves less and destroying their chances less and reducing the stakes of the film, ultimately because you can't see, because the end of Act 2 that you had is something you have a plan for. And the end of Act 2 that's actually coming down the pipe is something that you're just not prepared for. Do not worry about that. Embrace the fact that you're not prepared for it. Turns out the movie is more awesome, more powerful, more emotionally charged than you thought. That's all that means. Go ahead and take it. One other thing that I want to bring to your attention here, in terms of the things that writers do that minimize the impact of the end of Act 2, is that a lot of writers will build an arc and a lesson around a theme. They'll say, well, this is the thing that the character needs to learn, so obviously they haven't learned it yet. Learning to trust other people, be friends, whatever. So they'll put that lesson in their back pocket for the end of Act 2. And they'll have their protagonist push and push and push until the relationships around them start to disintegrate, and someone's going to have an intervention and say, you know, you're being a real jackass, and I just don't like this version of you. And then the protagonist is going to stop and go, oh, friendship. That's what I haven't been listening. Oh, and now we're in Act 3. That is not the worst case scenario. Don't think, if you have something for your character to learn that solves their problem, then you have not yet found the end of Act 2. Your character has got to push and try everything that they can reasonably try to accomplish their goal until quite literally they have destroyed every last chance of success. If there is someone willing to have that intervention with them, then they haven't been pushing hard enough to accomplish what they want to accomplish. Now, I'm not saying every single character is going to wind up being a social pariah at the end of every single Act 2. That's not the case. What I am saying is, if the thing that your character needs to learn in order to transition from Act 2 to Act 3 can be summarized on a fortune cookie, you did not do the work. You need to let them push and push and push and push to achieve their goal until there's no chance of success left. Once they hit that point, it's not about mastering a basic life skill. It is about, at that moment, reinventing their entire identity and becoming the person who can actually achieve this thing, having been the person who was born to fail. It's about reinventing themselves on a fundamental level and becoming someone different, becoming something different in order to move this goal forward, because the goal fundamentally is more important even than their own identity. And to be honest with you, that's the inspiring part of cinema. That's the inspiring part of watching acting performances. So as you let this character drive themselves to failure, don't let that failure be easy. Don't let it be safe, and don't let it be something that they should have already known. I mean, obviously, like, it may be something that they should have already known, but it was going to be something that they could never have known. It's going to be something that they were never going to see. If it's something they can learn from therapy, it's not deep enough. If it's something they could have just done the work for, it's not deep enough. It's gotta be a complete transformation. So you have to let them use every tool in their toolbox first. Let them try everything to make this plan work, until not only is there nothing left, but there's nobody to help. You understand what I'm saying? That's what it takes to get to the end of Act 2. It's hard to see our characters go through like this. And one of the other things that's difficult as a writer is that this isn't actually about doing bad things to the character. Writers are sadists. We oftentimes don't mind punishing or hurting a character for the sake of catharsis. We find it often engaging. That's not what this is. This is letting the character push themselves for, at least internally, what is to them a noble cause, even if it's from the outside looking in, even if it's narcissistic or, you know what I mean, or psychopathic or whatever the case may be. In terms of the character's own inner world, every character is the hero of their own story. They're doing the right thing. And it's leading them to destruction because they never really had the tools to make it work, and maybe they didn't understand what it was going to take to succeed. And now the whole world is coming down on them because they forced it. And they're still pushing. Once you get to the point where that has reached its ultimate conclusion, there is no other place to go but change. That's the end of Act 2. So you make a list of all the things that your character needs to do to push their efforts to achieve their goal to the point where there is nothing left. Absolutely nothing left. And where do they put themselves in that effort when there's nothing left? Where do they lead themselves through that unsustainable and relentless drive to make this thing work when it's clearly not working? Make a list of all the things that they need to do that are challenging to do in the mechanical, technical sense of actually it being something that they need to invest a lot of effort in. And if you think that's not going to get emotional, you're crazy. You will not need extra emotional expository scene work, because anyone who loves this person is going to beg them to stop. As part of building their life and trying to achieve their goals. And this character is just going to keep going. There's no way to avoid drama. Even in a comedy, the stakes will be there for you if you commit. Make that list, and then write the scenes where they do those things. By the end of this week, you're going to be 3/4 of the way through your screenplay. Next week, we'll talk about how to wrap this up. In the meantime, thank you very much for being here for the right stuff, and I look forward to learning with you. Have a good week.